That was the novel thing about the way they did shoot the show, is that to get a big star like Fred McMurray involved, because that was a big thing in those days, to get a huge movie star to do television. For a number of reasons. It just, sometimes you see John Wayne, as a little guest spot cameo on I Love Lucy, or Jimmy Stewart, but to get them to anchor a show was not happening. It just was not unheard. It was unheard of, really, because it was beneath them. Television, it was like a caste system. Feature films were where you wanted to be, and television was where you wound up. And McMurray was still a huge star. He had all those huge hits at Disney, The Absent-Minded Professor and Follow Me Boys, and did The Apartment with Billy Wilder, in fact, while he was still doing My Three Sons, and, Double Indemnity, but that was a few years before that. So to accommodate his schedule and to get him to agree to do a television series, because it's a grind, you're even in those days, it's 5 days a week, 8 a.m. till 9, 10 o'clock at night. He didn't want to do that. So they said, well, we'll shoot all of your stuff at once. We'll just, and he had to be out of there by 5, 6 o'clock too. So he'd get there at 8, probably work to 5:30, and they would shoot everything that had anything to do with Fred. You'd work out 9 or 10 episodes a day, and you would shoot just the master, and if you're in it, and then they would just go in and get his close-up, and then they would move on to the next scene. And it didn't necessarily have to be, like I say, the same script that they were shooting. Could have been from another script, or 4 or 5 scripts, and so you would do that all day long. It was a total McMurray experience, and your close-up, your two-shot, whatever matching shots in those scenes would be gotten, after he left, because he would be there at the start of shooting, be there maybe 6 weeks, and they'd get the bulk of his stuff done, and then we would proceed to do all the scenes he wasn't in, go back, do close-ups. Script girl would be standing on an apple box because he was 6'4", and you'd be reading your lines in a close-up that was already shot of him. That matching close-up, you'd be doing it with somebody reading his lines off stage, which was a great acting exercise, because you never, you feed off of another actor. If you're working well, you're getting to work with Dad, and my dad was a vaguely mannish woman standing on an apple box. So that was created endless psychological problems for me, I'm sure. And so he, but that was our day. And then he would come back at the end of the year and maybe shoot, come back for another 2-3 weeks. So his whole, out of maybe a 7 or 8, 9 month schedule would be maybe 2 months. Split at the beginning, a few weeks at the end, catch up. All the loose ends would be tied up at the end, and it worked. Yeah.
So all of the scripts are written before you even start shooting?
You'd get 12, 15 scripts would plop on your doorstep day one, and they'd come as the season kind of, the shooting schedule unfolded. You would, you get your other scripts would come in, and in the very first year, we're saying some of those shows in the very first year, the first season, never aired more than once, because they shot 45 episodes. And there's only 52 weeks out of the year. So, a lot of those, that's just the way they worked in those days. By the end, we were doing, I think, 22, 24. So that even if they showed every one, that's 48 weeks. They still filled the other time with special programming.
How do you deal with this as an actor? Is it a challenge? Does it make your...
Nah,
No?
It was one big episode to me. One giant thing with Dad and having a problem, and didn't matter what the problem was, the reactions were pretty much the same, and the tone was pretty much the same, and I would always have the zinger in the scene, and and as a kid it was no big deal. You're flexible, you just do that. For a guy like William Demarest or William Frawley, that was a totally foreign way of working, and for them to keep track of what the story was that in that episode, you'd really have to be on your toes, because I think a lot of those older guys just read their line. They read the scenes that they were in and go, that's good enough, But if you're working that way, and you really have to know what, some kind of what the nuances of the story, if we ever had nuances, it had to be pretty clear.